Welcome everybody to Pathways to Aviation. It's day 3 of our 3rd annual Pathways to Aviation Career Week. If you've been part of our weekly career conversations every Wednesday night, this is going to be a different format for you. We typically talk about like a best practice, like how to prepare for an interview, how to write a resume. But today we're going to talk about career specialties. For example, yesterday afternoon, we had a workshop on aerospace engineering with 2 amazing engineers who shared their career interests, their pathways. They promoted their companies. They talked about the jobs that were available, and we just had a great conversation. It ended up being 58 minutes long. Today could go the same way, but today's format is going to go in such a way where we're going to have 3 incredible pilots talk about their roadmaps, what they're doing now, and then we'll open it up to everybody to ask questions of these 3 amazing people. And this workshop could go from 30 minutes, and if you don't have any questions, we'll kick it there. But if you have questions, we'll probably extend it to that 1 hour, at which point we'll shut it down.
Exactly.
Pathways to Aviation is a nonprofit. Our whole thrust is to introduce people, all ages, to the world of aviation. And if they're interested in pursuing a career in the industry, we will do everything in our power to make it happen. We'll introduce them to executives in the industry, just like we have 3 today. We will also coach them on career planning. So we'll work with them on understanding their soft and hard skills, writing resumes, talking about what they say when people ask them questions like, what are you going to do with your life? Or what are your interests? To questions that they can answer in the interview. We want to make it so that the process to landing the job of your choice is fluid, it's seamless, it's professional, and it's effective. And that's the role we play. We offer this at no cost to anybody, as we're funded from different opportunities and donors. So we want to make this available to any student, high school, college, flight school, A&P school, you name it. Anybody who's in the profession or anybody who's not in aviation or aerospace and wants to get in as a second career, we make that happen. So without further ado, we have 3 great pilots. I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Collins, who is a pilot with United Airlines, and she is going to talk to you for the next few minutes about her world. Elizabeth, it's all you.
All right, thank you. My name is Elizabeth Collins, and I'm a pilot with United Airlines. I currently fly a Boeing 777, we call it the 777. It's a very large aircraft, also flown the Airbus for United, and I've flown many different types with different airlines. I'm going to talk just for a second about me and how I got here, then why United, and finally I'd like to focus on how you can get my job so I can retire. So my path to United was all civilian. There's you can go civilian, you can go military. Maybe Greg will talk a little bit more about going the military path. And also, when I was sitting in your seat, I didn't know how to get to United. So I kind of took a circuitous route here. I almost went into the military. I didn't. Went off to a different career and came back later. I worked for 4 airlines. I flew charter and I flew corporate before I went to United Airlines. Why United? I love my job and I love where I work, and I'm at exactly where I want to be with the company I want to be at. The reason is United offers a lot of diversity in terms of where they fly and what they fly. And for me, I like to have the option of either flying domestic and never going more than 3 time zones away from where I live, or flying international, going to all kinds of different places and staying in hotels in really exotic locations like London. It's not as exotic as it sounds, but it is interesting and challenging and a lot of fun. I've flown through my various jobs. I've flown I've basically flown everywhere in the world except Antarctica. And it's been interesting, it's been challenging. I love what I do, and I'm back to international right now. So why United? There's the diversity of the way they fly and the types of aircraft they fly. Also, we have a big base in San Francisco. I live in Lake Tahoe, so it's nice to be close to base. I start and end all of my trips in my base, so I like a close base. So how can you get my job? there's a number of basic requirements. Experience, obviously. You're not going to get your private pilot license or even your commercial license, Jenna. Hello, Jenna, I see you there. And then walk into United and they'll say, sure, come on, we'll throw you the keys to, to a 777. You're going to need to build experience in both in flying and also sort of in other skills. How do you get that experience? Again, civilian, military. And I'd like to point out at United, we've started a new program called Aviate. You can find out about it by going to united.com/aviate. And guess what? You'll find that we're trying to develop pathways to get hired as a pilot at United. And so we've developed partner universities, partner flight schools, partner commuter or regional airlines. And if you're working with any of those, basically what we want is we want you to start thinking about being a captain at United in the future from wherever you are in your career or school life right now. So I encourage you, if you're interested, go to united.com, go to Aviate, and it'll talk a little bit about how you can sign up and start getting affiliated or associated with United right now. Another really good way of sort of testing the waters or getting United to get to know you is internships. We do offer internships. Again, go to united.com, I think go to careers, and I believe if you search in there, it'll talk a little bit about internships. So many of our pilots were interns 5-10 years before they became a pilot at United. Contacts, as we've been talking about in Pathways in Aviation, all the time, anytime you can, network, contacts, etc. And if you know somebody, I always think it's a great idea. If you like the job, if you think you want the job that somebody's doing, ask them about it. Hey, tell me what your day is like. Shadow that person, excuse me, shadow the person if you can, and just develop a better understanding of the job by talking to somebody like me or Greg or Pete or anybody, depending on what you want to do. Finally, the most important thing I can say is make good choices. The choices you make now are going to follow you for the rest of your life. By that, I mean, work hard, do great in school. What kind of classes do you need? STEM classes are great. I was a liberal arts major. I was a French lit major for a while. Didn't stop me, but again, I came back to it later. Always present the version of yourself that you want to be, how you want to be perceived. So it doesn't mean that I dress up in my uniform and go to the grocery store because that's really dorky. But if I'm out and about, I try not to be a total bum all the time. Now, if I'm in my house, that's a little different.
So Elizabeth, you're saying pilots aren't dorks? Is that what you just said?
No, I did not say that. I'm at my time, but can I just make one more, can I go 1 second longer? Just talk about coronavirus and what this has done to our industry. In January, we were booming. We were hiring people as fast as we could, and we were training as fast as we could. Corona's had an impact on everybody, obviously, and it's had a big impact on our industry. Our industry is very cyclical, and it does that. So if you want my job, you're going to have to be willing to go, okay, I know there's going to be good times when things are booming, and also down times. And so it's a good idea to get a degree in something other necessarily than aviation, like Jenna did. And I just talked to Jenna yesterday about this and said, you know, now is a really good time to maybe think about that backup plan. One final thing, and that is just because we're in a downturn now, depending on where you are, you might be in an excellent position. Your timing might be perfect for when things come back around. So I went over my time, sorry.
No, you're good. The only thing I'd add is this is a great time to invest in yourself and your future.
Yeah.
Perfect. That was awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next up from American Airlines, Greg Meisinger.
Hey guys, my name is Greg Meisinger. I'm a first officer with American Airlines. I've only been on board with them for about 2 years now, so a little bit maybe different perspective than Elizabeth and Joel have. They've been there at their respective airlines longer than I was. Prior to that, though, I was all military. So first off, I just want to thank Eric and Pete and the rest of the professionals that are here kind of sharing. I didn't have anything like Pathways when I was growing up, and getting into aviation is exactly what I wanted to do. So also thank you to all the students and everybody else that are here to kind of you're taking a great first step, or even if it's your 15th step towards what you want to do. So thanks for being here. But in the U.S. Navy, I flew F-18s, and I currently still fly F-5s out in Fallon, Nevada, if you guys know where that is. And I've absolutely had a great time doing that. But my overall goal was to eventually end up at the airlines. So The route that I took was purely military. Once I was finished with my time there, I was afforded the opportunity for an interview at American Airlines. They picked me up, and then I started flying next door with them. So, you know, for me, why American? A lot of the same reasons for why United that Elizabeth said. One of the big ones was the locations and the what kind of served me best for what I thought I wanted to do. And all the major airlines are great companies, and you can kind of see the small differences with location, where they fly, what kind of aircraft they fly, and you'll find a niche that kind of fits you, and you'll probably end up gravitating naturally towards one or the other if you're really looking at these. So a lot of the same reasons Elizabeth chose United, that's why I chose American. I have family that lives in Los Angeles, where I'm currently based, flying the A320 family of aircraft, so the narrow body domestic stuff. And a lot of their international destinations I really am looking forward to once I'm more senior, flying to as well. So the other reason I chose them was basically, you know, they offered me the interview. I went in there, and every person I interacted with, I had such a great experience with, and I really enjoyed interacting with, and that really turned the corner for me. I had a few others that were at the top of my list that I wanted to go to, but I had such a great experience walking into American. The people really made the difference. So that's why I ended up there. You know, prepping for the interview for me, it was only just a couple years ago, and anyone who's been here at some of the other Pathways events in the past has heard a lot of phrases like networking, researching the company, things like that. And you'll notice as you start researching these companies that everyone is very similar in terms of how their interview processes go. There are some slight differences, maybe a new test here, or a situation-based interview over there. But all that stuff is kind of public knowledge. So you can research the company, see what they're looking for. But what really surprised me was that all of these companies are inviting you for an interview after they've already seen your, let's call them hard skills. They know what licenses you have, how many hours you have, what aircraft you've flown, and they like it. So they want to hire you. So really the interview for me was completely we want to meet you, see who you are. And the captains who interviewed me, you know, they're judging, do I want to sit next to this guy as I fly around the country for 4 days? And if we get stuck for weather overnight, is this the kind of person I want to be hanging out with? So really they're interviewing kind of your temporary friend, if you will, that you're going to hang out with for the week or so. And that's what they're really waiting to give you the job offer for, because they already like what your flying experience is. So as you prepare and kind of want to get into this industry, there's a very clear path with the hard skills, if you will, that you can take. But then a lot of those soft skills and being a good people person is really what can kind of propel you towards the top. I also want to kind of give an interview of a day-to-day in the life. You know, as a narrow body domestic person, normally I'm gone from home anywhere from 12 to 15 days out of the month. But what's nice about this industry that I really enjoy is you can kind of move those days, trade trips with other pilots, and kind of mold a schedule that is very much not a 9 to 5 to fit what your schedule is. And as you get more and more senior, you get more and more control over your schedule, where you want to go to overnights. You want to head out to Hawaii for the weekend, things like that. So normally these trips are 3 to 4 days in length for me. At times I've gotten layovers back at home in Reno, which has been really, really fun. And I really enjoy the dynamic nature of the entire industry when it comes to a schedule. Normally I have just enough time on the narrow body side to kind of get a good workout in. You see the local town that I'm at, maybe a town I've never seen before, and then get back to my next flight onto the next destination. So that's kind of quick picture of the interview, and then kind of my day to day. For American Airlines in particular, you can go to jobs.aa.com, and it's going to cover a wide plethora of jobs available at American, to include the pilot stuff. And much like United has a program, American also has a cadet program as well, to kind of help up-and-coming pilots move pretty seamlessly into the mainline side of the operation. So that's all I've got for now. I'll be happy to answer any questions in the future, and I'll pass it back over to Pete.
Cool. Nice job, Greg.
Great job, Greg.
All right, Joe, can you outdo Greg and Elizabeth? They knocked it out of the park.
In half the time. I'm just
I don't
joking.
think
No, I'm
so.
just joking.
Hi, I'm Joe Rajasic. Elizabeth and Greg gave great input, great insight. It's going to be hard to top this. So I think what I'll do is I'll just give you my scenario, what happened to me in my airline career. When I was in college, I decided that the airlines, actually in 1971, there was a recession, and people were getting laid off, kind of similar to today. So I took the advice that we already heard, and I went and got an A&P license and my Bachelor of Science degree in Aviation Maintenance Management. So I'd always have something to fall back on that I liked. So that's important. You want to be happy in whatever you do, and I was really looking forward to an airline career. But when I got out of college, the airlines weren't hiring. People were still furloughed. So I decided to get ready. I wanted to prepare, which is just what you can be doing today. Right now, we're in the same situation exactly. So I did a lot of flying wherever I could. I picked up any flights to get my ratings, more time. And when the furlough was over, I was ready, and United called me, and I went to work for them in 1979. And I had a beautiful, amazing, wonderful 37-year career, ending as a 747 captain. So I can't say anything bad about aviation, but there were some high points and there were some low points. So you just have to be prepared. I went through a furlough even after I was hired. We went through a strike. We went through employee buyout, which didn't work out. We went through 9/11, and then United declared bankruptcy. So you would think after all that, it's a negative, but I had the best career ever. I would not change one thing. And if all of you feel the same way, then go for it. Because if you love it, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's how I felt. And I could tell from Greg and Elizabeth, that's how they feel too. Everybody who's in the aviation industry loves it so much that nothing deters them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the careers. You were talking to 3 people today who are professional pilots, and we're all professional pilots in the airline industry. But I had a person ask me the other day, well, what else could I do? How else can I earn a living? So just quickly on the back of a napkin, I came up with 32 jobs that you can do to fly an airplane where somebody will pay you. So I'm sure there's even more than that. But that'll give you an idea of what you could be doing while you're trying to figure out where you're going to go, which airline to go to. If you're going to go to an airline, are you going to go to a corporate pilot? Are you going to be an air taxi pilot? Are you going to be a firefighter? There's so many openings. You want to decide what's good for you. What draws you to aviation? What's going to make you happy? I've already been through all this, and I can tell you that just about any part of aviation is just fun. When you have it in your blood, it's hard to get it out. and I totally agree with what Elizabeth and Greg said. Everything they said was what happens. Greg, I'm glad you put your everyday in there, because that's the main thing.
Yep.
Is the schedule. Airline schedules are a little bit different than most people's 9-to-5 job, because typically when we fly, they want you to fly for a couple of days in a row. So you have to be prepared. You're going to be away from home. So make sure that works with your spouse and your children if you have, or the rest of your family. There's other things too. The military is always hiring, but right now they are hiring even more. And Greg can chime in on this too, but just last week they relaxed their height requirements.
Right.
Because they had requirements which may have limited the number of people that could have applied. So
Well, it would have limited Pete for sure, Joe. I'm just letting you know.
he's too short. But there are many avenues to choose.
Yes.
And when we're finished, well, actually, I'm the last one. So when we get into the questions and answers, if anybody has any specifics on any careers or anything about my career, please ask. Good luck.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Perfect. All 3 of you. Amazing. Okay, Elizabeth, unmute yourself. I'm going to start off with a question, and if we go too long, then that's okay. We'll continue on. But Greg kind of touched on it, but what can you describe, or how can you describe the typical hiring process to becoming a commercial pilot at either your company? But what's the process? Because everybody on this call is interested in piloting. They're involved to some degree, some level. Some are early in their hours, and some are ready to go. But can you describe what the typical hiring process looks like?
Okay, are you asking specifically for United or in general?
Yeah, go for it. Since you're representing United, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I think typically, and I'm going to give you the civilian side of life because it's a little bit different coming from the military side of life. But typically, someone will have acquired experience and hours and flight time before they've applied to United, because there are requirements, minimum requirements, and those are posted on, again, the website, united.com, go to careers. And those minimums are probably not enough to get you hired because it's very competitive, even when we had too many pilots. So to be competitive, you probably need more. So not an unusual path is to start at 250 hours, as one of my friends on here has, and she might start by towing banners or a flying pipeline or sitting as a second in command on an aircraft that may not require 2 pilots, but because it's a commercial operation, they want to have 2 pilots. From there, she may go on and start at a commuter or regional airline and acquire experience and flight time flying. My path, for example, was I went to one in the Midwest and flew to 16 cities for a while. I got furloughed from that one in the first furlough. Then I went on to another one and flew basically around everywhere in the US. Again, more experience, more time, etc. I then went to another airline and was flying worldwide. In fact, I rarely touch US soil. And again, more experience, more time. And then when you have that amount of experience and time, then you go to United Airlines. Our process is like this. You fill out an application online and you include your resume, a very detailed account of your hours and how they break down, instrument, nighttime, et cetera, turbine time, PIC, pilot in command or captain time. These are all very important elements. And you submit that application once it floats up to the top of the pile. And things that will help you are, at United especially, we love people. We love, because we're going to be in this little cockpit for 4 days or 3 days or 6 days with somebody. So do we want to get, is it somebody we can get along with? Are they diverse enough? What do you do in your community? Do you volunteer, or do you do interesting things? Or do you just hole up and sit in front of a computer all day? That might be okay too. After that, after your application floats to the top and gets to the attention of an actual human, not necessarily a computer, then the next step is you'll be called in for, or you'll be sent what's called the Hogan cognitive assessment. We call it, well, some of us call it, what brand of crazy are you today? It's an assessment that you do online. After that, if you successfully pass it, then you get called in for a personal interview. And that's typically one HR person, one line captain. And at that interview, by the time you get there, the job is yours to lose. And what I mean by that is you've passed all the hurdles. And now, as Greg was saying, are you someone we want to be in a cockpit with for 4 days? The only absolute disqualifiers are if you come in cocky and arrogant and expect the job to be yours, it might not go so well for you. And then the other reason that you would be disqualified automatically is if you make bad choices, if you have a DUI, things like that, you will not get hired. I'll stop.
All right, Joe, Greg.
Yeah,
So
I wanted to ask you, when I got hired, the interview process was a little bit different. I don't know if they've changed it. The first step for me was to get a medical exam. I don't know if they still do that.
No, so yes, when you got hired, United used to require that you have a medical exam by their medical examiner. We no longer do that. You are required to have a first-class medical certificate. The other thing that's different is, and when I got hired as well, I had to take a sim. Part of the interview was you went through a simulator ride. That is no longer required.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
Greg?
So kind of how I mentioned earlier, each company is very similar in how they run their interview process, especially obviously the types of people that I'm looking for. The nuances with American that were slightly different from United. is in the application process, which I'll just mention. Most of the airlines out there use pilotcredentials.com or airline apps. And you can also, I think, see some minimum requirements for hiring on those websites as well. Those are third-party websites that the companies use to kind of sift through their apps. American actually has you take kind of, let's call it a watered down version of the Hogan in the application. So your application is not even submitted until you've kind of taken almost a watered down version of that Hogan. And so a big difference is once your application's in, you actually don't take the Hogan test like you do at United. And again, your interview prep and study of each company, you know, that information's out there about when you can expect certain things to come. So American runs a 2-day interview right now. The first day is essentially administrative. Turn in all your stuff, give us your logbooks, give us your hours. They're going to just QA it, make sure that, you know, you said you had 1 million hours and you actually have in the ballpark of 1 million hours. And then you go and do what's called like a pilot skills test. And if you guys ever played the game Bop It when you were like a little kid, it is lights and numbers and all this other stuff. And I don't know where that information goes, but I'll tell you, out of the 30 people in my interview class, all 30 were invited back for day 2. So obviously I hit enough lights and rung enough bells in time to make it happen. So the second day is a lot like Elizabeth said, is the interview, but really they didn't care about, you said you had this many hours, but really it was, you know, this or this. They asked me about my experiences. They asked me about the tell me about a time questions, the what would you do questions. They're not really looking to see, do you have enough credentials for us to hire you? Like Elizabeth said, they already want to hire you because of your credentials. They want to see, how does this person approach problem solving? Or if they have not necessarily combative, but maybe a heated interaction with somebody, how are they going to deal with that? So a couple of the questions I was asked too was more conversational towards, again, any sort of volunteer things you do in your community. What hobbies do you have? And again, this is more of a window in, is this the type of person I want to hang out with for a couple of days? Is this the type of person we want at our company? One of the big things Elizabeth also mentioned was kind of maybe some color in your past, right? You got some speeding tickets, you've got some problems like that. Obviously there's a few disqualifiers, DUIs, things like that. But, you know, if you had 10 speeding tickets and you said you had 10 speeding tickets and you put that on your application, they were most of the time okay with that. They wanted seeing if you were truthful. Now you could have had 1 speeding ticket and that's it. And you decided you didn't want to tell them. That's kind of a red flag to them. So another thing they're looking for, I think, is honesty and truthfulness. Because obviously in the cockpit of an airplane, you need to have that with the person you're sitting next to. So after day 2, I talked to a couple captains. Then there was kind of the HR interview, a little bit more administrative, but also making sure that you know, there's another set of eyes on me that, hey, this is the type of person we want to hire. And then they put me on a plane and sent me home. And luckily I got the phone call the next day saying congratulations. So again, that was the process. Now coming from the military to even get to the point of putting in an application, obviously I had to have the experience. And one thing I will say is there are absolutely minimums before you can apply, but I guess I can say not all hours are equal. They love to see what kind of hours you have, right? If you're an instructor and you've got a bunch of instructor hours, that means a lot. You know, you've actually been teaching somebody, you've been out there. You know, all my hours in the military were earned 1 hour at a time, unless I was in country and I'm doing 7-hour flights and refueling. So my sortie count was through the roof, but my total number of hours was actually pretty low, thousands of hours lower, in fact, than some of the people I was in my interview class with. But they take that into account, the type of hours you have, where they're coming from. So, you know, if you're an instructor and you're flying multiple different types of aircraft, they look at that, not just the pure numbers of, well, how many total hours do you have? So as long as you meet those minimums, again, there's a lot of area in there to really make yourself shine and stand out depending on the type of flying you're doing and most importantly, the type of person you are. So.
Excellent.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Which brings us basically to my favorite part of the whole workshop. Again, less of me and Eric and more of you, but this is when we turn it over to all of our attendees to ask questions of these 3. They kind of laid out what they did. They described to you the hiring process. They laid it out in such a way where I don't have to repeat it. but now you can ask them questions that maybe I haven't come up with. So Erica's going to unmute this. We're going to do our best to be able to go one at a time, but we have 3 great pilots for you to ask questions to, and no holds barred.
And as I'm unmuting you guys, you might have to unmute yourself, because what I'm doing is I'm unmuting the bridge, and some of you, it's asking you to unmute. So you guys will have to get after that.
And then we're going to end this. We could talk all day, but we're going to end it at before the hour is up.
Okay. That's the challenge when you unmute everyone. Okay.
If you're providing the feedback, then just type a question in chat.
Yeah, and I just took care of that. Israel, I had to shut you down because you were providing that feedback. So if there's a lot of feedback, guys, just type it, send it in chat, and we'll get it answered. But, oh, everyone just got muted again. So let's see here.
If you have a question and you're unmuted or you're muted, just say, have a question.
Yep. And if you have a question, get after it, guys. Let's go.
Kind of more of a comment.
Okay, Caitlin.
So I obviously want to become a pilot eventually. I've discovered that in Reno and Minden, they offer discovery flights. So if anybody, classmates, high schoolers want to go and try and see if they even like being inside of a cockpit and up in the air, they can do that.
Yep. That's great.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I have a question.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah, so I'm a low-time commercial pilot trying to build time, obviously, to ATP. What would you recommend to be good resume builders when I'm in that time between 250 and 1,500 hours?
Well, as I've recently been talking to somebody about almost a similar situation, I cannot recommend more strongly continuing on and getting your CFI and teaching, because you will learn more by teaching than you do by actually flying. The other thing I can suggest is anything you can do to get out there and fly and get experience. And so if that means, hey, let's, taking your buddy and going out and sharing, splitting the cost of renting an airplane, if that's what you are doing, and flying up to Sierraville or up to, Quincy or something, that's great. Now, it's expensive to rent airplanes, I know that. So once you get your CFI, you can start teaching and you can get paid, for actually flying. The other thing is, you can look into pipeline, banner towing, glider towing, but all of those, 250 hours is not a lot of time and experience, and some of those come with additional complications, not just you in an airplane. So approach them carefully. There are some dangers involved, shall we say.
That cover it, Zach?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
I just want to hop in and answer a question I saw in the chat, a little bit easier than me writing back. Christopher asked why I ended up leaving the Navy and what the transition was like. So I always kind of knew I was probably going to leave the Navy and I wanted to go and do commercial flying. So that was kind of my game plan going in. Honestly, the transition I felt was pretty smooth. Once you've got enough hours under your belt in different aircraft, you learn how to learn, right? So it's different aircraft sure fly very differently, but the transition schedule-wise was dramatic, but I really enjoyed it. And the biggest transition I think was almost dialing things back, relaxing. The industry is a lot of fun. Everyone is a little bit more calm than I was used to dealing with in the military. So I would say the transition was a huge thumbs up. And I still am in the Navy on a reserve side part-time, and I really do still enjoy it. And I jump back and forth. Sometimes one day I'm in an F5 and the next day I'm in an Airbus. But I'll tell you that I've started falling in love with aviation all over again, because I am really exploring the space, if you will, with all these different types of aircraft. So I would say that it's not something that you should be afraid of. If you're going to go in the military and think the transition is going to be difficult, it takes work, sure, but I truly enjoyed it. And one thing, while I still have the mic, we mentioned the time away from home, and that might be tough, 12 days. Some people are thinking, I'll tell you what, the days that I'm home though, you're home. You don't have emails to answer depending on, other things you decide to take on. You are enjoying the local area. If you live in Lake Tahoe, gosh, you've got everything available to you, right? It is So the days that you're home are absolutely incredible. So yes, you're gone from home on those days of work, but when you're home, your mind is absolutely free to truly enjoy the family and the local area. So.
Oh, Greg, I'm happy you mentioned that because a lot of people think that corporate, public sector, private sector jobs are similar, but when you have time off, you have time off. Yeah, you're not sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, so I'm happy you mentioned that. There's a couple questions here. Does anyone have any insight or connections in the air medical sector?
Yes, I
Joe.
flew for medical team for 3 years. If you're asking what the requirements are, you got to realize that aviation piloting is a supply and demand. Right now, there's way too much supply. But when things change around, you're going to go back to the normal. And obviously, to be a captain, you're going to have a lot of time, a lot of ratings. Many times, these air medical jobs are available on turboprops, King Airs, Pilatus, those kinds. And the requirements, depending on who you're talking to, would probably be a lot less. You're going to need more than 250 hours, but a friend of mine got hired with about 600 and some hours as a co-pilot. So that's available too.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. Did that, and I think that was from Keely. Did that cover it, Keely? Yes?
Yes, thank you.
You bet. From Jenna, does anyone know of any flight schools that are currently hiring CFIs?
Well, Jenna, I think you know the 2 flight schools in town in Reno. Once you have some time, I'm sure they're going to talk to you. I don't know how many flight instructors they have, but when everybody finds out how good you are, they're going to want you.
Wow, that's nice to know. Jenna, do you have your CF? When are you going to have your CFI? How many more, or how much time? Reality.
Hopefully 2 months.
Okay.
I'm
So
thinking
as you get closer, stay in touch with Pete, myself, and obviously we'll keep Joe and Elizabeth and Greg in touch too, because we know most of the groups that are looking for CFIs, and as soon, or if you're getting like within a week or 2 of that, let us know so that we can get you in contact with them. And here's the other thing, crazy thing with finding jobs, guys. Sometimes they don't have a job there, but they'll create one for you depending upon your experience. So you actually never know, because everyone's always looking for where's the open job. Well, good golly, go talk to someone and they might create a job. That happened to me in 1995. I went in for one position and they didn't have it, but they created a job for me based upon my background. And I contracted for 3 years. It was an incredible time. So Jenna, always keep that in mind. And as we get close, we'll start reaching out. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
And when you're looking for a job, when do you typically recommend that someone like reaches out to that company? Like, should I reach out like you just said a week? Is that enough? Or should I reach out like 2 months in advance and just
If you know what your date is, here's what I would do is you reach out to one of us and see if we know anyone there first. Okay. And that way we can open the door for you and present you as a recommendation. Okay. And
Why wait?
What's that?
But why wait?
Yeah. Why wait?
If you want it, go get it.
Yeah. If it's going to happen, let's start now. And by the way, what Jenna is saying, this is an offer to every single one of you that are on this call, not just specifically for Jenna. We'll go out. I mean, we were looking to see who we know at Jet Propulsion Lab, at Ford Motors. I mean, we will go explore everything and anything for you guys, because our whole goal is to help you get the job of your dreams and what you want to do. Fair enough?
Mm-hmm.
So Jenna, why don't you, I think the best thing to do is send Pete an email with when you think you'll have the CFI, and then Pete, myself, Joe, Greg, and Elizabeth will start reaching out to the folks that we know that are running flight instruction and see what's out there.
okay.
Is that okay, Pete? Did I answer that one okay?
It
I just wanna
did,
make sure
yeah.
you fire me.
I think there are like 2 or 3 other questions in chat. Am I mistaken?
Yes, there are. I'm getting to the next one.
Okay.
Mr. Jasek, what were some of the napkin jobs that were good? So I'm happy they asked that question, because in my hookups, I'm going to have Joe send me all the 32 other flight opportunities. But Joe, can you share with us a handful of those?
Wow. Well, we mentioned a lot of them. There's airline piloting. There's corporate pilots. There's air taxi pilots. There's medical pilots.
charter, right?
You could fly pipeline. Elizabeth mentioned towing banners, towing gliders. There's other parts of aviation, which I think most people on this call are interested in being a pilot, but there's also helicopters.
Yep.
People do hot air balloon rides all the time. You could fly a dirigible for Goodyear. I mean, it's endless. Whatever you think you need to do, as long as you have that commercial pilot license, you could do it.
Yep.
But it is supply and demand.
Exactly. Well, and I'm happy because I know we had a rotor. We have a rotor interest on the call too. So we're not just working on fixed wing guys. There's a tremendous amount of opportunities, whether you do law enforcement, emergency services, even with the Army Guard as a reserve, flying Chinooks and Blackhawks guys. There's a tremendous amount of opportunities. You just need to let us know what you're looking for, and we'll see if we can hook you guys up. So thanks,
Yeah.
Joe. That was great. Let's see. I love this question from Taylor. Do you recommend getting a degree or get your license and go to a wholly owned regional like Envoy and flowing through to the majors? Well, I mean, that's a great question. What do you guys think?
So can I answer that question by just saying only go to the first half of it, and my answer is an emphatic yes. There are companies, I believe United is one of them, that does not require a 4-year degree. Because I will tell you, I've spoken with the director of hiring and pilot development, and we have in the last 6 years maybe 3 or 4 pilots that we have hired that do not have a 4-year degree, but they have something else. They have an A&P and they have all kinds of other experience. So yes, and 2 reasons. First of all, you're going to need it when you go on beyond Envoy. And the other thing is, we have this cyclical economy, there's particularly a cyclical industry. And so it's always good to have a degree in something real to go back and fall back on, and you never know, if you lose your medical, that could happen, then what? So it's first of all, I would say absolutely necessary if your goal is to get a job at Delta, American, United, Southwest. And secondly, it's just a really good idea to get it done.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that brings up a great point too, because if you go out and you work to get your A&P and you become an aircraft mechanic, and you're first off, you're getting paid as an apprentice for probably around 20 months. And then when you come out with that degree, just like Joe did, it could open a tremendous amount of doors, because they're looking at the fact that you went out and got that on your own. And again, sometimes these airlines, they do offer a higher education too. So there's always that option. Good, Elizabeth?
Yep.
Did that cover that question, Tyler or Taylor? Yes? Okay. Greg, I don't know if you saw this one from Sid. Do you think that doing an ROTC through any school provides more opportunity than a school linked with an airline?
Yeah, I did see that. I replied to him in the text, but it's probably good for everyone to hear. Just a quick synopsis. I would say that is, you can't predict timing and other things. So I would say no. One does not give you more of an opportunity over the other. They're just very different. So it all depends on what you're willing to undertake. If military flying interests you, well, it might be an easy choice there. But I fly alongside friends at American who went purely civilian. They went to an aviation school. One of my best friends went to Purdue. And now we're in the same place. I have a high school friend, purely civilian. He's now flying at Delta, got hired almost the same day I did. And I went the military route. And so I would say one is not, gives you better opportunities than the other, but just very different. But it's all in what you seek out, because even in the military, you can find yourself getting involved in something you didn't want to, and you're actually in a worse place, So I would say ask yourself what really interests you, what are you willing to undertake? But one nice thing I will say about the military is they paid me to fly from the get-go, which was kind of nice, because I know flying is not an inexpensive hobby. So other than that, I would say it really comes down to personal choice there.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. And we got some more, guys. So we're going to work through all these. From Caitlin, it was, what do you all recommend as college courses in aviation? And I want to get a degree in aviation, but not sure what. What opportunities are out there, guys?
Well, I could tell you there's always opportunities for mechanics. If you look at today's world, even if the airplanes aren't flying, they're still being maintained. So the mechanics are still, they're still employed. They're still working. This is a great time when airplanes aren't flying, when they're scheduling long-term maintenance. So if you get an A&P license and you like being a mechanic, I think you're going to have a pretty good time of having a job.
And I think that to add to that, you know, when we were talking yesterday, I mean, engineering degrees are great when you look at a lot of your astronauts, they're mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. Obviously, aerospace is a whole nother field of engineering. The question becomes is, you know, how's your science, how's your math? But and then Elizabeth, what was your degree in again? I'm sorry.
Well, I had many, but at least at one point it was French lit.
Wow, even French lit people can fly. So, you know, there's many, as that saying goes, there's many different ways to get from A to Z. But, you know, I think the best thing to do, I think what we'll do on this one, Pete, is maybe get Caitlin hooked up with a mentor to kind of work through this and help her figure out what that looks like. Is that fair enough?
Mhm.
Okay. Ashley, what schools are recommended in Reno? Don't all jump in at once.
Two. Well, there's two at the Reno airport. I see somebody answered already.
Yep.
Thanks, Jenna. Free Basin and Advanced Aviation.
Yep. That's, I just want to make sure everyone heard that. Yep. Thanks, Jenna.
I
Okay.
have a question on that, Eric. We've been talking a lot about Reno, but we have people on the call from all parts of the country, well,
Yes.
shoot, world. How do they go about finding a company like Advanced or the others at the regional airports?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think, you know, we've talked about this through our workshops for the last 4 years. And I'm going to make it really simple, but then it's just all up to you. Go hang out at an airport. You know, go to one of your, go to your regional airport, go to the general aviation side, go to the FBO, the fixed base operation, and just start talking to these folks on who's there and, you know, what kind of opportunities are there. Some of our candidates over the last 4 years got hired on at various airports just because they hung out at the airport, asked questions, and were willing to do whatever job that the airport had them do. I mean, one of the guys was a janitor. I mean, give me a break. And now he's getting his pilot's license. So I think a lot of it, guys, is making yourself visible and professing what you're interested in and just being bold enough to do that. I think general aviation is a great place to do that. Like I said, the fixed base operations where the general aviation planes get their gas. I mean, here in Reno, it's Atlantic and Stellar. Some of the other small airports, it's really easy to figure it out. But the larger airports, you look for some of the main names: Atlantic, Stellar, Millionaire, and just go talk to those guys. Guys, what do you think? Anything to add to that, or we good?
How would you suggest doing that now with everything either closed to walk-ins or just calling them?
Yeah, you know, Keely, there's different ways to do that. I would absolutely call in, email. I think the bottom line is, if you're the ones that's the most interested in hitting them in all the different ways they communicate, they're eventually going to have to answer your question or return your call. But yeah, I think, you know, even if we're dealing with the times like right now where there's limited access, I think emailing is great. I also think calling is a great way too, you know, getting yourself out there. So yeah, any way you can, Keely, would be perfect. That good?
Can I just chime in on this one too?
Please.
I know so many professional pilots who started by fueling, you know, getting a job at Signature or Millionaire or something like that, and fueling aircraft. And that also gives you a lot of interaction with people who are actually flying these airplanes, having the job that you want to get, you know, that you want to get so that you can get your ultimate job later. You never know where that next opportunity is going to come from. And it might be that you're fueling an airplane, you might be fueling a 172 that belongs to somebody who owns a 135 company.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay, let's see what else we got here, guys. Jenna answered the name. Oh, this is a great question. Let me see. We've got about a couple more questions, and I think Taylor answered this, but Zach had the question: does having a master's in a non-aviation field help?
Yes.
100%. Absolutely. Let's see. Israel, he says, bachelor's in IT, student pilot, from Puerto Rico. Sorry about feedback, but I was driving home. Yeah, there's a bachelor's in IT. You think that's going to help anything? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because I don't care what industry you're in right now. Cybersecurity is a big deal. You know, we talked about it in engineering yesterday. I know it's a big thing with the planes because planes have been hacked through Wi-Fi. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for that too. And Jenna said, yeah, and I agree with what Jenna said. She said, yeah, some of her best connections have been just going and checking out an FBO. So guys, did I miss any of the questions? Pete, you looked at those. Joe,
And
Greg?
just to chime in on the master's degree thing as well, I know some companies specifically love to see that more than others. But also, once you become a pilot at one of these airlines, there are a lot of job opportunities inside of the airlines while you're a pilot. You know, you can become a chief pilot. You can work in the training departments. You can move towards the management side. Obviously, there's unions which you can go work for, and those jobs are, you know, hiring from within, from the pilot corps. Definitely will look at some of those degrees and things like that. So also realize getting into the pilot side of some of these companies doesn't limit you to that, to just that. There's a lot of opportunities once you're there at United, American, Delta, or any of the other airlines as well.
The other thing that you're showing to a prospective employer, you know, airlines, we're really interested in hiring people that we know can get through the training program. And so one of the reasons that they're asking you for what your education has been is, well, what school have you had and how did you do at it? Are you a good student? Will you get through our training program? So, you know, if you can say, yeah, you know what, I graduated #2 in my class at, you know, such and such place, they're going to go, hey, good student.
No, and Elizabeth, I think it's great that you bring that up because as many people as I've interviewed and hired and fired over the years, when someone goes to a school or even a trade school or whatever it might be, a certification, what always is a red flag for me is, well, why didn't you finish it?
Yeah.
You know, and that always poses to be a very interesting conversation. So, but I agree with you 100%. Any other questions, gang?
Eric, I wanted to add to the flight instructor questions. Jenna, you mentioned that, you know, how do you find a job as a flight instructor? I wanted to point out that, yeah, there are flight schools, but a lot of people are freelance also. So once you get your CFI, you can get your own students. In fact, if you don't want to use a complex airplane and you want to use one of the school's airplanes, they're in business to get students. So if you have your CFI and you get a student, you call your friends and say, hey, I got my flight instructor rating. Are you interested in going up for some training? You go to the school and say, hey, I'm bringing you a student. Check me out. I want to start renting your airplanes. I want to be on your team. And they'll welcome you.
That's perfect. In fact, I know Kurt just said that the KMJX airport, which is an Ocean County airport, and I believe that's in New Jersey. They're looking for CFIs. Jenna, I mean, that might be a little bit of a travel, but see, that's the other thing to consider too. And that's why, you know, that's why Pete and I are putting pathways out there, and we're getting a lot of responses nationally, is that if you're willing to move, there are opportunities all across this country. And then I think one of the things that we're doing on Friday is we have one of our partners, JS Firms, that has job opportunities throughout the entire nation. And I think that's where you can look at it and say, hey, you know, maybe living in New Jersey is not bad, or I'm going to be in Virginia or Florida. So one of the things, Pete's laughing. And one of the things, just don't limit yourself to, I want to stay in Nevada or California. Think beyond that, because those opportunities can present themselves anywhere. That cool? We good? Okay.
One last question, or are we done?
I think Pete, and Kurt, thanks for that comment, Kurt. Appreciate that. I think, oh, Tyler asked, will there be a pilot shortage after COVID? And I will tell you guys, there's so much speculation on what businesses are going to survive, what businesses aren't going to survive. I think it goes back to our initial comments. Invest in your future. Every industry is different. See, there's the pilot dog. I knew he'd come out. Every industry is cyclical. And you know something, guys? The more you're prepared for those opportunities, because they will present themselves, you guys are going to be in a fantastic position to take advantage of that. So you know, I don't want to speculate. I don't think anyone wants to speculate on any shortage or whatever. But, you know, you keep working through it. Like Elizabeth said, go fuel planes for a while, get paid to do that. Or go get your A&P and get paid 16 to 18 bucks an hour for 20 months while you're getting trained to be a aircraft mechanic. So there's a lot of different opportunities, guys. Fair enough?
Eric, that was great. And I'm going to follow up on Zach, his comment just now, because it's a good segue to ending the call. And that's, we designed this whole framework for you guys. There are a few people on the call now who are teachers who have students that may want to participate. But we have a number of students, even on this call right now, who are in our, what we call our career ready portal, to work on their career readiness so that when they're ready to apply for that job, they have all their pieces already wordsmithed and prepared. And that's the resume and the elevator pitch and interview answers and that sort of thing. And we guide them along to that readiness so that when they go to interview, they knock it out of the park.
Exactly.
So a lot of you RSVP'd in our system, and you're categorized as a prospect, but tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to switch you over to a candidate so that when you come back into the system, you can go through that process. Because what happens at the end of that process is employers are watching once you've completed the process, employers will be there to see your profile, check you out, maybe check out how many hours you have, your degrees, your personal bio, your career goals, and they'll contact us and say, we want to hire Jenna or Joe. How can we get in contact? And then we make that happen. So if you're already in our system, take advantage of it.
Perfect. And we've got one more commercial. Joe, can you lay that on us, please?
Oh, yeah. Last week I made an offer to any of the Reno pilots or wannabe pilots. I've worked out a deal with Advanced Aviation. I can offer you free simulator time, and it will count as training because I'm a licensed CFI. So bring your logbook. And if those of you who haven't flown, I'm going to give about a 30 or 45 minute training session on how an airplane flies and the controls, etc., so that you can get used to it, see what it's like. And I would also add, it was brought up before about the Young Eagles. That's the best deal in town.
Yep.
You can fly in an airplane free. So if anybody wants to do the simulator, let me know, because I'll need to schedule it in advance. I'll try to get a time when we could get a lot of people together, because you'll learn by watching.
Yes. And what we'll do, guys, is Pete will get that out in our to-do list. And that way, if you guys want to do that, we'll get you guys hooked up with Joe. So not a problem. I've got that in our to-do list here. So that was a great question. Perfect.
Eric, all I have is we have 2 more days of this. If you or a friend is interested in A&P, aircraft maintenance, we're putting on a good show tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Both companies are internationally based companies you'll want to talk to. They have wide reach in the whole aviation aerospace community. So even if you want to be a pilot, these are great contacts to have. And then on Friday, we're talking about job searching with our job board operator, which is JS Firm. And they claim to have currently 9,000 jobs on their website that are active. So the next 2
9000, Pete? Really?
Yep, 3 zeros.
Okay.
So I want to thank Joe, Greg, and Elizabeth. You guys killed it. I thought last night or yesterday was great. This
You
was
guys rocked
pretty
it.
darn amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. And then, gang, any other questions, make sure you get into Pete. Otherwise, we're going to do the countdown. You guys ready? 3, 2, 1. Bye, guys.